Hi guys, my name is Nim,
And I'm Audrey.
and this is our story and our testimony of God pulling from death to life and God's great faithfulness and His power throughout all this. So it started on the dates I'm not really sure of. Okay, it started on Friday. I went to urgent care, and that's what date was that?
The December 29th.
29th. Urgent care. I had debilitating pain in my left arm. Didn't know what it was, so I went there. They did all these tests on me, and they pretty much said I had pinched nerve. So they kind of just went with that, gave me some steroid cream, and let me go home. And that was Friday. And then had some pain meds, and I don't remember much of Saturday and Sunday. And so Audrey will pretty much be saying the rest of the story and the testimony.
Yeah, so Friday night we get back from the urgent care, and they hadn't given him any pain meds, just a steroid medication and then a pain injection in his butt. So he can't sleep that night. I remember he's just in agonizing pain and tears. And so Friday night didn't sleep. Saturday morning he's just in an awful state from being unable to rest and being in so much pain. We end up being able to get some pain medications from his PCP, get it filled in the afternoon, and finally around 4 p.m. he's able to finally get some rest for the first time in over 24 hours. And things seem fine. And then around 11 p.m. or so, I notice he starts to act a little weird, and I think, man, no more pain meds for you. Like, you don't react well to pain meds, no more pain meds for you. Midnight comes, and 1 a.m., he's sleeping in a separate room because he can't get comfortable on our bed still. And I have the baby monitor on him. Cyrus and I are in our room. Nim is in a different room sleeping, and I notice that the baby monitor keeps going off. And the dogs are supposed to be sleeping in our room at 1 a.m. and they're not there. And I'm like, where are the dogs? And I check the baby monitor, and Nim is sitting up and playing with the dogs. So I go in to the room, and they have their collars on. Nim is fully clothed, like not wearing pajamas, wearing a jacket, jeans. And I'm like, what is going on? So I went and I checked our outdoor security camera, and at 1 a.m. he decided to go and walk the dogs. So I got pretty upset, and I said, you have a pinched nerve in your neck. You're not supposed to be doing anything. Your left arm is hurting you so much. You need to go back to sleep. I don't want you walking the dogs. So over the next, 3, 4, 5 hours, it's a constant me watching him on the baby monitor, him getting up, going back down. And finally around 8 a.m., he wakes up, has breakfast, and is just sitting there at our kitchen counter eating, and then goes to lay down for a nap while I go to get Cyrus ready for the day, getting him breakfast and everything. And at one point I text a friend of mine, man, I'm not cut out to be a nurse. I can't deal with caring for a patient, if you will. And I was starting to tell her, like, Nim went and walked the dogs at 1 a.m. and whatever. And she goes, man, that's really weird, Audrey. Are you sure he's okay? And I said, I think so. But that triggered me to go look at the discharge instructions from the urgent care. And in it said, if the fingers and toes are pale, discolored, call your physician. If there is, and I forget the medical term, essentially numbness, then go to the ER. The thing that was weird about it, though, is that Nim had numbness in his fingers already that Friday when we went to the urgent care. So the numbness thing wasn't so concerning to me, but the pale fingers was something that was new. So I went over to him on the couch, and I looked at his fingers, and he was laying right here. And sure enough, his fingers are white. And I said, babe, are your fingers numb? And he said, yep. And so I said, what about your toes? And he goes, yep. So I pulled off his socks, and his toes were all white. And I said, oh, crap, we got to go to the ER. And he's like, what? Why? And I said, we got to go to the ER. So then this is around 11 a.m. I go and I get Cyrus ready, get myself ready, and I come back out here to get Nim, and we head out to the ER. Yeah. So I come out here after getting myself ready, Cyrus ready, putting the dogs away. And come out here, and Nim is undressing himself in the middle of the living room. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "No, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm getting ready." I was like, "No, you're wearing clothes. We're taking you as you are to the ER. This is an emergency. I don't need you to look good. I need you to go with me now." So I put his clothes back on him. We go out the door. I grab the baby carrier, all this stuff. And it's a 12-minute drive from our house to the emergency room. By the time we get there, he could barely walk. And I remember us pulling into the hospital, into the entrance of the hospital, and we get a call from a friend of ours. And they're in Hawaii at the time, but I had texted him about what was going on. And he calls me, and I was like, "Hey, I can't talk right now. We're turning into the hospital." And he goes, "No, Audrey, I feel the Lord wanted me to call you guys and pray this." So I said, "Well, then pray," you know? So he says, he's on Bluetooth, and he's praying something. I have no idea what he prayed. Next thing, we get into the hospital. I'm carrying Cyrus. Nim's walking. We go into the ER entrance, or we go into the ER, and they sit down at the desk, and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I think he has a bad reaction to pain meds, and his left arm is hurting a lot." And she looks at him, and she puts him in the triage area right away. A nurse runs out and starts, like, move your arm, move your leg, and then she goes, "You got to go with us now." And I was like, "What is happening?" And this was all within a span of 5 minutes that we arrived. So they wheel him back there, and they said, "Ma'am, if you'll just stay here, we'll come get you once we have him settled." And I said, "Okay." And so then for the next hour, Cyrus and I are in the ER, and I'm, texting some friends, family, telling them, "Hey, Nim's, we're at the ER. Not sure what's going on. I think I said something about bad reaction to pain meds. I don't know." So for about an hour, we're sitting there, and then someone comes to me, and she says, "Hey, you want to come back there and see him?" And I said, "Yes, I would love to." She goes, "He's very sick. He's not doing very well, but his blood sugar was at 19. And I'm medically ignorant. I was like, "It doesn't mean anything to me. What does that mean?" And she goes, "It could barely register." And I'm like, again, means nothing to me. I've never had my blood sugar down. Like, I have no idea what that means. And she goes, "Okay, well, here's what we know is that his kidneys are injured from being hypoxic. He's very, very sick. We gave him some glucose in order to get him conscious and alert." So I go back there with them. Cyrus is in the baby carrier. At this point, he had fallen asleep. So he's in the carrier in front. I walk back there. And I say, "Hey, babe." He goes, "Hi." He has an oxygen mask on. He's like, "Hi." I said, "Hey, babe, you okay?" He's like, "Yeah, feeling better." And his shirt is off. His body's all red. He's kind of swollen. And so I start walking closer to him. And before I can grab his hand, a nurse runs in, a male nurse. And he goes, "He's positive for strep, get out." And I said, "What?" He said, "You got to get out right now." And so I get out they kick me out. So I go stand at the door, and I'm looking at him. And the nurse says, "Hey, we'll come and get you." And it's like, I think it was actually the technician, Megan. She's like, "We'll come get you. I'm so sorry. Just wait for us in the waiting room." So she sends me back out, and I'm sitting there with baby, and I'm like, what is going on? And about 5-10 minutes later, she comes out, and she says, "Listen, this is what we know. He's positive for strep. He has scarlet fever. He has pneumonia in both lungs. His kidneys are injured because of being hypoxic, low blood sugar, like all this stuff." And I'm like, "Scarlet fever? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what is going on?" And she's like, "That's all we know right now. Have you guys traveled out of the country in the last..." And like, starts asking me these questions. And I'm like, "No, we don't have any. We haven't. Went to Houston. Like, you were on a plane." I was like, "Yeah." "Was he next to you?" "Yeah, we were sitting right next to each other." Like, and so she's like, "Do you feel sick?" And I was like, "Not at all." "Has baby been sick?" "No." So, like, "Have you been around anyone sick?" And we're just like, "No, I don't know. No, not at all." So then she goes back in. I text his family, "Hey, this is what's going on." And strep, scarlet fever, kidneys injured, blood sugar 19, like all these different things. most of these things not registering with me just how serious everything is, right? And so I'm just kind of texting, and I send it out, and I send it to your family. I send it to some friends who'd been praying with us from the urgent care, your left pain in your left shoulder, and they and then I get a call from his mom, like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, and she's just sobbing. And she's like, Audrey, I'm so worried. And my response was, why? We're in the hospital. I think we're fine. Like, he's going to be fine. Like, he's sick, but he's going to be fine. This is why we're here. They're taking care of him. And she's a NICU nurse. So she knows things more than I do. So when she heard all those things, she was like, this is really bad. So they come out a third time to me, the patient technician or whatever, and she says, do you want to come back and see him outside of the room? You can't go into the room because you have baby scarlet fever, is very contagious, but you can see him from outside the room if you want. I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I stood outside the room, and the nurse, Marissa, was kind of talking to me. They made me wear a mask and all of that, and I got to talk to Nim at the door, and they said, it's better for you to go home at this point. And I said, so you guys aren't gonna send him home? Like, this literally tells you how I just really did not understand how serious things were, just from being medically ignorant. And she goes, no, he's not going to go home today. He's very sick. And I'm thinking, okay, you keep saying very sick. I've been very sick. He's like, people get very sick all the time. They take meds and they're better. We're at the hospital. Make him better. And I said, so you're going to admit him? And she said, yeah. And I said, like, he'll go home tomorrow? Like, what? And she's like, I don't know. I can just tell you he's not going to go home. He's very, very sick. And you need to go home now. You need to take care of baby. And once he gets admitted, we'll let you know. We'll give you a call, let you know whether it's ICU or whatever it is. And I was like, okay. And so at this point, we start getting everything ready to go home. And she tells me, hey, he's going to get admitted into the ICU. So call in about 30 minutes or so, and they can give you some more updates. So I take Cyrus home, texting out some friends. Two of our friends text me, and they're like, hey, can we come over and just pray with you? And I'm thinking, that's no, I like to be by myself. I don't want anybody around. But the Lord, I felt, was like, no, you need people to come around you and pray. So I was like, fine. So they came over, brought chocolates, tea, prayed with us. And I was just like, well, thanks for coming. Because at this point, it hadn't really hit me yet. Our doula from when I had Cyrus texted us Happy New Year earlier in the day. And so I just kind of gave her an update on where we were. And I said, please pray for Nim. So this is around, at this point, like 6 p.m. or so. And
what day is this?
This is on December 31st, New Year's Eve. So Sunday, December 31st, 2023. And I text some of our friends about what's going on. Now, I remember that Friday before, when we left the urgent care, Nim said, babe, let's take communion tonight. And I said, why? Do you think what's happening to you is spiritual? Do you remember this conversation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I remember just saying, no, I didn't say it was spiritual.
I asked you, is it spiritual?
And I wasn't even thinking about that. I said, I just want to take communion because there's power in the blood and in the body of Christ. So just second communion.
Yeah, and I remembered that. So these friends that I texted on Sunday, and one of the things that says, someone's got to go to the ICU and take communion with Nim. It can't be me because of baby. But someone's got to. So then I texted out a friend, and I said, listen, can you go and take communion with Nim? It's a big ask because he has some really serious infection. They don't know what it is. So there's a chance that it's contagious and it can get to you. So it's a big risk, but someone needs to take communion with him. And then someone else had texted me. She said, hey, my husband wants to come visit him. And she's like, can we? And I said, I'd love for you to. And can he take communion too? And told her about the potential risk there. And she's like, absolutely, he will. So the two of them went into the ICU and took communion with Nim. And then they texted me. One of them texted me and said, hey, he looks really bad. He's extremely swollen. He's not there. His eyes are crazy looking. He looks really bad. And this is around 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m. on the 31st. And I'm just like, dang. So then, I'm feeding Cyrus dinner. And then I start to feel this urgency in my spirit, like you need to be there. So I texted our doula. And I said, hey, is there any way you can come in the next 45 minutes? I need to go to the hospital. I will get Cyrus all ready for bed. If you can get here, I'll be able to get to the hospital. And she said, absolutely. So she got here in like 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. I took off to the hospital. Cyrus is still nursing at this time. And so I tell her, listen, I'll come back in about 3 hours. Like 10 o'clock or something like that to nurse him, and then I'll run back to the hospital. It's only a 12-minute drive, or I'll set up a bottle, whatever. So I run up to the hospital. I get there, and in the waiting room is a friend of ours from church, and he's just sitting there, and I'm kind of taken aback, and I'm like, what are you doing here? Because he's not one of the people I texted.
Oh, he's not?
He wasn't. I was like, first of all, how'd you know? And second of all, like, what are you doing here? So I asked him that, hey, what are you doing here? And he says, I came to see Nim and to pray with him, and the Lord won't let me leave. And I said, really? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, weird. Again, things not truly registering with me all the way. And so I go back there to see him, and I'm like, hey, babe, how are you feeling? Like, just kind of talking to him. And at this point, his parents were already driving on their way from Houston to Kansas City. And his sister was trailing behind them about 2 hours or so. So I'm kind of talking to him, and 5 minutes later, so within 5 minutes of me arriving there, the surgeon comes in, introduces himself, and says, hey, we need to do debridement and exploratory surgery on his left arm. His left arm was humongous. The way that the patient technician described it, she said he looked like he was like Popeye, because the left arm was so big. Yeah. And so I was like, I don't know what that means. And praise the Lord, we had gotten connected with a sepsis detection expert out of Houston. A friend of mine had connected me with him. And I didn't know this guy anything at all prior to this, but they had told me at this point that Nim had sepsis. Yes, they had told me in the ER that he had sepsis, and that was one of the things that I had texted out to everyone. And so I text with him, and I said, hey, they want to do this exploratory debridement surgery on his left arm because it's so swollen. Like, what are your thoughts on that? I have zero medical background, zero medical training. So it was an incredible miracle that God had connected me with this guy who's not just some doctor or whatever. He's a sepsis detection expert. Was a doctor out of Houston, and then founded an AI company that specializes in early sepsis detection. So he eventually told me that I think that's a good move to do. You got to go do it. I said, okay. So the surgeon starts talking to me and saying, hey, your husband is in grave condition. He's very, very medically fragile right now. You need to understand that he may not make it out of the surgery. And then it starts to, now the seriousness of everything starts to hit me. And I said, okay. Then the nurse who's taking care of Nim, it's the only time we'd ever seen her in the ICU. The doctor steps out and she tells me, hey, it's probably a good idea for you to just go home, get some rest, shower, all of that. I guess I looked a mess. And she says, come back after you get some rest, take care of your baby, and then he'll be out of surgery, and then you'll be in a position where you can take care of him. I was like, oh, okay. I'm thinking about it. And the surgeon is outside the door, so I go out there, and he goes, hey, I heard what the nurse said to you. He said, don't go home. I said, what? He goes, don't go home. I said, I'm only 12 minutes away. He's like, it's not a problem of you making it home. You just don't want to be in that position where you have to come back and you can't. You don't make it back in time. And I was like, what? And so, I go out into the waiting room, and by this time there's a bunch of people in the waiting room, a lot of our friends who had gathered on New Year's Eve heard about, it spread. Like lots of people became aware of what was happening to you, and they came to pray. And I was just like, whoa, there's a lot of people here praying for you. Yeah. So I kind of tell them a little bit about it. And I asked the surgeon, I go back and ask the surgeon, is my husband going to die tonight? And his response is, maybe not tonight, but you should probably talk to him. And so I apologized for some things. I didn't say it out loud, but secretly I said, no, actually I did say this out loud. I said, I'll be nice to you forever, like stuff like that. And
that's recorded.
and I remember calling, talking to his mom, talking to his sister, and I don't think at this point we had taken pictures yet. I can't remember exactly, but essentially, I was doing the goodbyes, taking the pictures. Calling Joy, our doula, so that I could FaceTime Cyrus, and you could see Cyrus, and took a picture of the two of you.
Okay.
Take pictures of you with your siblings. I forgot to take one with your parents, but and so then as we were waiting there for them to prep you, I was just talking to the people out in the waiting room, and then I was like, man, it's like it's like 9:45 or something like that. And I said, how much longer till you guys take him into surgery? And they said, it's going to be a little while. And I said, okay, I'm going to run home to nurse Cyrus, and then I'll run back. So I run home to nurse Cyrus, and I'm running back to the hospital. And on the drive from the house to the hospital, it's a 12-minute drive. And I asked the Lord, I said, you got to prepare me. How does this end? And I felt the Lord say, victory. And I said, okay, but I don't want the type of victory where it's like one day I see him in heaven, he's going to be fully healed, but you're going to lose him here on earth. I was like, don't play with me. And those are the words I said, don't play with me like that. If you're going to say victory, I want the victory here on earth. I want him to make it. And I heard the Lord say, okay. I said, okay, well, then you're going to have to help me to govern my emotions and my thoughts and my speech in accordance with that word of victory. And you're going to have to give me faith for it, because I don't have any faith for it. And I felt the Lord say, no, you have faith for it. And I said, no, I don't have faith for this. I really don't, And he said, you have faith for this. You have the gift of faith for this. And I was like, so I was just quiet. And then, part of my history with the Lord is, asking him for a present on my birthday, all that stuff. And so the Lord asked me this question. He said, don't you usually get what you ask for? And I said, yes. And he said, okay. And then it was quiet again. And as I'm about to enter the freeway to get into the hospital, the Lord gave me this verse, Exodus 14:14. He said, only be still, the Lord your God will fight for you. And then I lost it. And I started to cry and cry. And because I guess that's when I realized that I was helpless. Like, I knew I was helpless, but that's when I realized I was helpless, and there was nothing for me to do. It's one thing being helpless because you don't know what to do, and another thing being helpless because there's nothing for you to do. And it was true in both senses of that word, helpless. And so I just cried, and for a good 4 or 5 minutes I cried. And I said, all right. Got into the hospital, and they'd just taken him back into surgery. Our friends were also there praying. And, we all start praying together. I all start praying. Lots of different people are there. And it blessed me so much to see everyone who showed up for you. It really did. So I get back to the waiting room. It's filled. It's the only people there are people who are praying for you. And there's about 20-something people there. Just people who are praying and contending for you. And then I understand that in the prayer room, they were praying for you as well. Yeah. Your name on the screen, all of that. And they'd taken you to surgery, and we were there a good 15 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. And then a nurse comes out and says, hey, he made it through the surgery. The doctor will come and get you. And I said, is everything okay? She said, the doctor will come and get you. And I was like, okay. So we wait another 15, 20 minutes. I'm like, wait, what the heck? They haven't come and get me yet. Why is it taking so long? So I ring the bell to get back there. And then another nurse opens the door. She goes, ma'am, you can't be back here. I said, yes, I can. This is my husband. So I kind of push past her, and I go back there. And I find your entire medical team is standing around your bed and in through the hallway. And they're all just it's very somber. And they're looking at the monitors. And so I say, what's going on? What's happening right now? And the surgeon looks at me and he said, we've done everything that we can. Your husband is on the brink of coding. And I said, what? He said, I'm so sorry. We've done everything that we can, but he's about to code any minute. And so I take couple of pictures of Nim and the monitors, and I run into the waiting room, and they said he's on the brink of coding, and everybody just freezes, and it's like time stood still. And the friend who was there, the when I first came to the ICU, sitting in the waiting room, the one who said that the Lord wouldn't allow him to leave, he turns to me and he says, Audrey, you need to go in there and you need to call him back. And I said, okay, you're coming with me. Because I'm thinking, you gave me marching orders. I froze. You can coach me through this because I've never had to do this before. So I go and ring the doorbell. Same nurse, ma'am, you can't come back there. And I said, I'm coming back there and this man's coming with me. So we charge through. We go on the other side of the bed from where his medical team is standing, and we just start to call him back. I take his hold like this, and I'm holding him on his head. I say, babe, you got to come back. You got to come back. Cyrus's first birthday is on Saturday. You got to be there for it. You got to be there for his, not just this one, the next one, the 18th birthday, his graduation, his wedding. You got to be here for all of it. You don't get to miss these things. We prayed for him for too long for you to miss out. And I said, and we have other children. Like, you've got to come back. You don't get to leave. And so so nothing happens, and our friend and I were just calling him back. The medical team's just, I don't even look at them, but the sense I get was they thought we were crazy. He's quietly calling them back, and I'm calling them back loudly. And maybe 40 minutes goes by and nothing happens. And so I stop and I say, hey, I thought y'all said he was on the brink of coding. And they're like, he is? And I'm like, well, wouldn't it have happened already? Like when you say on the brink, it means like in like the next few minutes. It's been a long time. And they're like, yeah, somehow he's hanging in. And I was like, weird. So another friend of ours from church had come. And so he gets into the room too, and the three of us are praying, but it's no longer a calling them back. Like, I'm not calling you back. I'm just praying over you and asking the Lord to intervene. And you're intubated, like all this stuff, right? And maybe another 30, 45 minutes goes by, and everything is just quiet. And I sense like a lull, if you will. And I'm like, okay, surely by now, if he was going to code, he would have coded. Yeah. Like, we're talking about another 45 minutes here. Like, what's going on? And the surgeon says, actually, the what is her name? Not the interventionalist. The one of the doctors, who's like the next medical director of the hospital, intensivist. The intensivist had called and says, I want you to start the CRT dialysis. And it's a slow, continuous dialysis meant for people with low blood pressure. His blood pressure was in the 40s, 50s. It was extremely low. Yeah. So I said, okay. And he said, but the thing is, Your husband has DIC. It's a condition brought on by this sepsis infection where he's both bleeding out and clotting at the same time. And in order to do the CRRT dialysis, we got to put in a dialysis line in through his femoral artery in his left leg. A very large artery, and he's probably going to bleed out and could die. And I said, okay. So I was like, okay, let me call someone. And he's like, okay. And this is 1 a.m. And I call the sepsis detection expert out of Houston. And I called him twice. He picks up the second time. And I said, hey, listen, they want to do this thing. I don't know what it is. Can you talk to the surgeon? So the two of them are talking. And then he explains to me, he says, hey, Audrey, if they do this dialysis, they put in this line, he could bleed out. He could die. But if they don't do it, he will die. I think you need to do it. And I said, okay, do it. Get it done. And so, there essentially was like before we do this, do you want to say goodbye again, And because of the word the Lord had given me about victory, I never actually said goodbye. But I said, okay, let's see. So I'm like literally holding my breath the whole time. And surgeon does it. And then I'm like, so did he bleed out? And is he dying? Like, I don't know. And he goes, actually, no, he barely lost any blood. And I'm like, oh, praise the Lord, he did it. All right, sweet, sounds good. And so then the dialysis starts to go. And after, I don't know, another hour and a half or so, another doctor comes in. I think it's the anesthesiologist, but I'm not sure. And she says, I don't think the dialysis is working. The point of it is to remove the acidity in the blood, because at this point he's in septic shock. So all his organs are failing. Septic shock is a severe form of sepsis, and so the infection was in his blood. It was shutting down his organs. It was so acidic, and I mean, you can imagine the blood is going through all of his going through his entire body and through all of his organs, and there's like tons of tubes coming from him, and there's just like brown black blood that's getting drained out. And she says, you see all of that blood? And I said, yeah. And she goes, that means that his organs are continuing to shut down. And they're not reversing the dialysis. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be working. How far away is his family? And so I texted them, and they told me, 5 hours, and I didn't tell them why I asked, They
knew.
Yeah, they knew.
They knew.
His mom was 5 hours away. And she texted me, is he okay? And I texted back, no, he's not. I wasn't going to lie at that point, And so this doctor says, if there's anyone in the waiting room, this is the time for them to come in and say goodbye. And so, that friend of ours was still there with me. So he went into the waiting room to come and get a few of them at the same time, at a time, to come in and say goodbye to Nim. And I'm there, and I'm just still kind of like spinning, like, man, the Lord gave me this word victory. And I don't feel despondent. I don't feel, I don't know. I don't feel devastated. I just feel like, man, this doesn't make any sense. And so then our friends are coming in. They're standing at the door. They're about to go into the room. And the nurse says, wait, stop. I'm sorry, I need to clean him up. There's blood all on his left side, and there's blood in his face. Like, he was intubated. There's just blood everywhere in his ear. And so she said, let me clean him up first before people come and say goodbye. So they're standing outside of the door, and the nurse starts to clean them up. And one of our friends standing outside the door, she starts to like war with God. And she says, no, God, we didn't offer up all these prayers so that you can give us some cleaned up corpse. We're asking you for our friend's life. We're asking you for your friend's life don't give us a pretty corpse. That's not why we're here. And so she, the nurse is cleaning him up and all of that. And then I don't know what happens next exactly, but essentially it's nothing. And I was like, wait, I thought his organs were shutting down and he was gonna die. And she goes, they are shutting down, but he's not getting worse somehow. Like, your stats were still like holding steady. They were terrible, but they were holding steady. And I said, oh, okay. At this point, it's like 2:30, 2:45 a.m. And I said, so is he about to die or is he not? And she's like, I don't know. He's critically ill. He's very, very sick. And I said, listen, I have a baby at home that I need to run home and nurse. Do I have time to run home and nurse him and come back, or is my husband going to die in that time? And she goes, I think you have time to run home and back. And I said, oh, okay. So I was like, maybe he doesn't die. So no one actually came in to say goodbye to you. You know? Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
I go out into the back into the waiting room. We all go back out, and I say, hey, I'm gonna run home, Nurse Cyrus. I'll be back in about give me about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But if you guys have to leave, you leave. It sounds like he's not dying tonight, and I'm not sure. And there, some of them are like, yeah, I actually do have to leave. It's like 2:30, 3 a.m. Yeah. And some of them are like, no, we'll stay. And so I was like, okay, I'm so thankful for you guys. So thankful for praying for him and keeping this. We'll be back, or I'll be back. I run home and I nurse Cyrus, and I run back as fast as I can. I get back, and one of our friends we have still a few friends who are there, and one of our friends who is 7 months pregnant is there. And I said, what are you still doing here? And she says, I can't leave. The Lord won't let me leave. And it's just so moved me. She's 7 months pregnant, you know. And she ends up staying with me until about 4:30 in the morning with you. And at this point, I'm just so thankful, number one, that you're not dead, you know. And then, so she leaves. I tell her to go home, go to sleep. And then the director of nursing starts to talk to the other nurse and cleaning everything up and whatever. And she goes, man, he's a completely different patient than the one who came into the ICU. And I said, yeah? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, when is he waking up? And she's like, I don't know. She's like, but he should have woken up by now. He's been off of the surgery meds for several hours at this point. By that time, almost 5 hours.
Oh, wow. And
she said, we're concerned about neurological damage. And I said, really? Like, you think he's brain dead? And she says, it's possible. If he doesn't wake up in the next, few hours, then we're going to have a neurologist come by just to see. And I'm thinking, what the heck? This doesn't sound like victory either, And so he's laying there, and I come over, and I said, babe. And well, I asked her, I was like, how will you know if he's not brain damaged, He like opened his eyes, he's moved his fingers, whatever. I was like, okay, because you'd had zero movement for, at this point, 5 hours. And I'm like, babe. Like, that's all I'm saying. Like, hey, babe. And after, like, maybe 30 seconds of it, I start to see this. And then he opens his eyes. And I was like, hey, did you see that? And I said to her, did you see that? And she goes, what? And I say, babe. And you open your eyes again. And I'm like, praise the Lord. She goes, whoa, yes, that's a really good sign. I was like, oh, thank God, Do you remember that at all? No. Okay. So then she texts me. She goes, how far away she asked me how far away his parents, and I say they're an hour away. They'll be here at 6 a.m. And she goes, it's time to clean up. It's because we don't want mamas to see their babies like this. So for the next hour, they were cleaning you up, changing your clothes, changing the bed linens, sweeping up the floor, getting rid of blood. Like, they were just cleaning. It took them about almost an hour. And 5 minutes after they were done, your parents, I heard the doorbell for the ICU ringing, and sure enough, it was your parents, and so I brought them in. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That was 6 a.m. Your parents
January
got
1st.
there. January 1st. When they told me that you were on the brink of coding, and when I snapped the pictures, that timestamp is 12:03 a.m. January 1st. So, yeah, it's been a wild ride, and then that was just the beginning of it.
That was just beginning, because I remember the Friday from urgent care. I don't remember Saturday. Definitely I don't remember Sunday. And January 1st is a Monday?
Yeah.
So.
What's the first thing you remember?
Well, the thing is, I remember a lot, opening my eyes a lot. I remember so many people visiting, some people praying. But the timeline is, I have all these pictures, but I don't know at all which one's the first.
Gotcha.
So I just don't know. I have no idea. Oh, I remember our two friends who took communion
with you?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I remember that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I remember that. So that should be the first.
Uh-huh.
But after surgery, I don't remember anything else after that.
Okay.
And it took me a while to remember anything until a few days later. Yeah, the timing for me is a little bit tricky. There were so many drugs. There was a time actually when I was having some hallucinations because of the drugs, that it helped so much that Audrey and a dear friend who lined up people to pray for me round the clock, every 2 hours, every 4 hours, in the room, and it helped alleviate that. And I wake up and someone's reading the Bible or doing something.
Yeah.
So someone's always there praying.
Well, we recognize that it was the Lord who preserved your life, and so there was a very real prayer, spiritual element to this. And so, your sister, your parents, your brother, your cousins came in to town, and we were, between the 7, 8 of us, we were covering the medical aspect of it and making sure you were getting great medical care from the ICU team. And so that didn't give us a lot of room in order to keep contending and carrying you in prayer. So having friends who prayed and just keeping that prayer watch over you was so critical, because for the first, 2-3 days, every time your surgeon would walk in, he would say, "Oh, he's still alive," like, "Whoa, he's still alive." And so it was really wild. We didn't know if you'd be able to see Cyrus on his birthday. You went into the ER and ICU on a Sunday. 6 days later would be a Saturday, and that was Cyrus's birthday. And I remember us not being sure how all it was going to work.
Yeah.
But do you remember that, any conversations we had leading up to Cyrus's birthday?
I remember talking about it because we didn't know anything. And what made it difficult was I couldn't talk.
Yeah.
I was intubated. So I was typing, I was literally pointing at letters just to communicate. And I could feel it. I wake up, I could feel it. My energy was so low. I had very little energy. And it's just enough to say a few letters, and I'd pass out again. Mm-hmm. And I remember having discussion. I knew Cyrus' birthday is coming up. And I'm like, what am I doing here? What's going on? Everyone's praying. I'm hearing organ failure. I'm left-handed, and I'm like, I can't move my left hand. Yeah. And then my toes and I was just immobile. I could barely use my right hand at the time. And I didn't know also that my vision, my left eye was blurred already. So I was pointing out letters that wasn't the right letters. Why? And they were like, "Is this what you're saying?" I'm like, you can't tell. I'm like, "No, that wasn't." And they're like, "What are you writing?" And I'm like, I'm pointing. But now I learned it's because I had double vision. So they were understanding me. I couldn't understand them. And that was just part of that. Yeah. It happened in a few days.
And I remember waking up Saturday morning. The plan was to bring Cyrus into the ICU so
Yeah.
we could see him for the first time in 6 days.
Yeah.
6 days to celebrate his birthday. And the night before, I'd cried and said, "Man, how unfair! We've prayed 10 years for this baby, and you don't even get to celebrate him going from being an 11-month-old to being a 1-year-old." You know, there's just weird social media pressures, I guess, or whatever. And I just remember just talking to the Lord about it. And so when I woke up Saturday morning to take him to the hospital to celebrate his birthday with you, we left the neighborhood and we're on our way. We just left the house and we're about 7-8 minutes away or so. And I get a call from your mom. "Hey, they're extubating him." And I said, "What?" And she said, "They're extubating him." I said, "Well, can they wait? You guys know I'm going to be there in like 8 minutes. I'm going to be there at 9:15. Can y'all wait?" And she said, "No, they said they can't wait." And I was like, "Fine." So I hang up, and thankfully one of my friends was in the car with me. And I was pretty pissed off. I'm like, "Man, y'all knew we were coming, but you couldn't wait." Like, man, that's horrible. And so my friend starts to pray. And she goes, "God, thank you so much that you love Nim and Cyrus so much that you're even protecting Nim's dignity so his son never has to see him intubated." So he never did, And so Nim got extubated 5 minutes before Cyrus came.
And there's a video actually of me when I first saw him. You can't. They tell you that you don't put too much pressure, and you could hear me saying, "Hi, Cyrus," and I could barely say the word, and it was so painful just to even try to say. It was so raspy. My voice was so dry. It felt like there was sand all over my throat because my skin was sloughing off, and so later on we learned that it was because of the toxic sepsis. The shock, it was happening to my throat also. So I had a lot of black stuff in my throat, in my nose, everything in my body was kind of sloughing off. So when I was talking to him for the first time, that was that.
Yeah.
And it was just 5 minutes before we celebrated his birthday.
Yeah. His birthday celebration was a whole 7 minutes long. We sang happy birthday once, and then we sang it again just to make it a little bit longer. And I think that was it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you spent the next 3 weeks in the hospital. So all in, you were in the hospital 27 days.
So the story that Audrey talked about was like literally the most crucial part. And then of course there's other parts leading to the miraculous ending where I'm home now. I went from whole organ failure to 0. No organ failure. And though I'm discharged, I'm home now. We're still praying for full recovery over my fingertips and my toes and my arm that I'm getting physical therapy for. There's a whole bunch of story. So many God stories, so many testimonies that happened in those 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not enough to say to all this, but there was so much where God would heal each part of my body at a time. They were saying dialysis over and over, over and over. And next thing you know,
dialysis.
long term, next thing you know, they're like, "You don't need it anymore." And you're like, "Wait, what's going on? No more dialysis? I thought you just said 2 days ago."
Yeah.
I go from not being able to walk next to my bed to being able to walk 48 sets of stairs. And that was just God, and that was people praying, and that was, answered prayers in God's hand over everything. The testimony of what happened here is God showing up because people coming together and praying. Powerful friends who pray effective prayers, who know how to contend with God.
Yeah.
And then I just want to thank God for, great support, family and friends, excellent, people at the hospital. An amazing wife who held it down, who knows how to fight for you physically and just know what to do, but especially spiritually, who knows how to run to God and say, "God, no." And as a friend of God, being able to contend.
In all of this, the Lord sent help. I said earlier, I was completely medically ignorant. The Lord not only sent us a sepsis detection expert, but He sent us a a very esteemed ICU nephrologist to consult and help us navigate. And so the two of them were consulting with NIM's medical team and just helping to guide the process, helping us to make sure that he was getting excellent medical care, helping us to advocate for him. Like,
That's
it
right.
was incredible. They told me what questions to ask, and at some point, people were like, "How do you know what you're saying?" I'm like, "I'm just really good at reading words, and just repeating them." I mean, I really didn't have to use Google during that time because the Lord sent help in the form of these two doctors who really were quite literally heaven sent. So thankful for them and people who connected me to them. Even with your surgeries, like when you got your sutures out, the surgeon said that just 2 years prior, he learned a new suture method in order to close up the wounds. Otherwise, you'd be looking at long-term wound vac care, having to carry around like all sorts of stuff. And so NIM's incisions, he has 3. He has a large one on his bicep that's about, is it like 17 centimeters or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
He has one on his tricep that's really deep, and then he has one on his left chest. And those were completely open. They were completely open for, I want to say, 11 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because with an infection, you can't close it right away. So they stayed open for 11 days, and then 2 of them were able to be closed. The third one couldn't be closed because it was still too open, so they had to use a special medical device. And then 4 days later, the surgeon was able to close that last one.
Using that special thing he just learned.
Using that special technique.
It's amazing.
And we were just like, what? And so we are so grateful for the medical team. We're so grateful for our friends who prayed. We're so grateful for everybody who's supported us financially, in terms of food, in terms of
driving
because
of the snow, the ice.
Yeah, there's incredible storms, and so friends that came to pick us up and give us rides, because we don't have cars that can go through 6 feet of snow.
We couldn't have made it without all the help we got.
With all those, yeah.
It's
absolutely.
impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. We needed each and every one. Even those prayers that no one saw. It didn't need to be on stage. It needed to be out loud. It's just like those prayers that was between you and God. And those tears that God counted, and God was like, I'm going to answer your prayers. Like my life is an answered prayer. My friend who's an ID PA, my best friend, she actually said, Nim, the fact that you made it out with what you did, with all your extremities, she's like, that's not usually the case. Almost always, you lose one extremity. You made it with all your extremities? Okay, it's like, and she said, if you do, that means usually you can't swallow, or you always have a bag, or you can't do this, you can't do that, but not like you have literally all your organs and you have all your extremities. You're just waiting for little tips to heal. And she couldn't make sense of it. I'm like, but God, and the prayers and the prayers and the prayers of this fine community.
Yeah, and even beyond, my understanding is that we've got prayers from so many, and I just gotta say, one day we're gonna have to meet them all. Like the people that helped save your life, medically and spiritually. The Bible talks about how the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. And one of the things I've learned through trials is when you have the Lord's nearness, you take advantage of it. You start to ask for everything, And so we have a lot of prayers wrapped into the Lord's nearness and into NIM's the saving of NIM's life, and we are contending for the blessing of all of those who blessed us in any manner. I feel like the Lord shifted us so much in terms of life, and community and love. So when I turned 38, I asked the Lord, okay, Lord, this year, what attribute of you are you going to reveal to me? It's something I ask the Lord every year. And he said, my kindness. And throughout this time, it's not going to seem like so, but I have witnessed the kindness of God through people and through him himself. In this entire ordeal, in the last, at this point today is February 9th?
9th, yeah.
Yes. And so since December 31st, I have witnessed the kindness of God over and over again. And I'm so thankful. I'm thankful for my husband's life. I'm thankful for all the doctors that we've had. The Lord is incredible. We've learned that lots of his medical team members were believers and who were praying for him. And it's, man, I think God really showed off with you.
It did. There's something more sobering than death, than knowing your time is up, or, you could go anytime. And in a time that I was out, some things were happening, and that's a different story for another time. But there is a nearness to Christ that when you face death, that you will not trade for anything. There's a nearness to his presence, and it makes things clearer. And I'm just so thankful. Like the main thing out of all this is Jesus. The main thing out of this story, out of our testimony, we're so thankful for what he surrounded us with, what he lined us up with all these friends and prayers and doctors, all these people that we're mentioning. But the centrality of all this is Jesus and the cross. I'm so thankful for him. I'm so thankful that he was with me.
Yeah.
When all these things were happening. Look, we were together. We were together somewhere, and I was with him. We were just communicating in our spirit, me and the Holy Spirit. It's all about him. And that's one thing I want to know. That's one thing I want to focus on. That I want my life to be a platform. This is my testimony. And everything that's happened in that month, because there's so many stories, that to be a platform is I want to boast about Christ. I just only want to boast about Christ. There's so many things to boast about, but there's only one thing that really can handle that kind of fanfare is the celebration of Christ. It's all about Christ. So I'm so thankful for everyone, especially for a wife like this. But Christ is all about him.
Yeah, when people ask me, how did you make it through? Like, how are you okay? How weren't you sobbing on the floor and just out of your mind? And I was like, I don't know. I think it was the Lord who helped guard my emotions in my heart and helped govern my speech like I asked him. Yeah. I literally had asked him, Lord, will you help me to govern my speech and my emotions and my thoughts in accordance with this word victory? And I think he did it. Even with our jobs, my firm was incredible in their support of me, allowing me time to take care of them. And
my job's going to wait for me until I'm back.
Yeah.
Whenever that is.
Yeah.
Before we end, I do want to end with just pleading to you guys that to continue praying for my full recovery for my fingers. Still in the courses in the end, and we want complete healing in all these parts. For my toes as well, if you don't want to see that, sorry, but yes, my toes as well. And full recovery over my hand. I'm left-handed, so of course I need that. I can move a little bit, but it's very, very limited. That's as high as I can go. So please continue praying. I know prayer works. Yeah. And we love you guys, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, friends.